Jihadi terrorists have threatened Canada and Canadians by name and with a clarity that leaves no room for doubt.
Prime Minister Stephen Harper announced new measures aimed at safeguarding Canada by thwarting Islamic terrorism here at home. His primary announcement was about strengthening Canada's borders.
Borders cannot be barriers. Still, they must be filters, effective filters. They must allow the free movement of honest people and the vital goods and services that improve our lives, drive our economy, and create jobs and opportunity. But prosperity without security is a fantasy, and no country can sustain its prosperity without the relentless defense of its borders.
The Prime Minister announced he would expand biometric screening at our borders for travelers with visas entering Canada. Now, previously, this type of screening was only collected for visitors from countries viewed as especially high risk, including Afghanistan, Syria, and Egypt. It will now apply to visitors from nearly 150 different countries. While Harper's announcement was met with criticism by some, there's a reason more countries are moving toward introducing or expanding biometric border screening for security. These measures help governments reliably track who comes in and out of their respective countries. Now, I'm all in favor of civil liberties, but keep in mind, those entering Canada with visas are welcome guests, but they are not entitled to unqualified entry. Now, in addition to this measure, the Prime Minister also announced more money to crack down on charities raising funds for terrorism.
Sadly, our enemies have learned how to profit from Canadians' kindness and generosity. They abuse the trust we place in organizations we expect to do good. I'm pleased to announce that the Canada Revenue Agency will also increase resources, the resources used to identify and to shut down charities that finance terrorist activities.
As you know, the Canada Revenue Agency has been monitoring organizations with charitable status and cracking down on those that are merely money laundering fronts for terrorists. One particular example comes to mind. Consider Irfan Canada, the International Relief Fund for the Afflicted and Needy, an organization whose charitable status was stripped after it was found to have funneled almost $15 million to groups with ties to the terrorist group Hamas. Incidentally, this organization had its charitable status revoked in 2011, and in 2012, Irfan Canada sponsored a Muslim conference in Toronto at which Justin Trudeau was a speaker. Now, amid the media storm, Irfan Canada was eventually dropped as a sponsor, but not before Mr. Trudeau had accepted. In 2014, Harper's government listed this group as a terrorist entity. ISNA, the Islamic Society of North America, is another group whose charitable arm was shut down after it was exposed to have distributed $280,000 to an agency allegedly linked to a terrorist organization in Pakistan. So this isn't some amorphous problem. It's happening in Canada. We have concrete examples of that. But at the moment, I would argue, we're only dealing with half the problem. You see, it's not just money from Canada that's leaving our shores to fund terrorism abroad that's a problem. It's also foreign extremist money overflowing into Canada to fuel extremism and social segregation here at home that's a problem. In April, Richard Fadden, the PM's National Security Advisor, testified to the National Security and Defense Committee that millions of dollars are coming into Canada to promote extremism. This isn't money that is necessarily funding terrorism directly, but rather funds that are fostering an environment susceptible to terrorism, and the CRA isn't tracking it. Fadden said, quote, "A lot of these funds are directed to religious institutions. It's very difficult in this country to start poking about religious institutions because of the respect that we have for freedom of religion. And make no mistake, were the government to start scrutinizing certain mosques over foreign money, I have no doubt that there'd be CBC stories about government harassment." This is a big problem. So yesterday I challenged Prime Minister Stephen Harper on whether we're doing enough to stop extremist money from polluting Canadian society. Here's part of our exchange.
Should we be concerned about foreign money that's coming into the country that isn't going toward funding terrorism directly, but that is going toward fostering radicalism or an extremist ideology, fostering an environment susceptible to terrorism? How concerned should we be about that, and what are we doing to monitor and track it?
It is the role of the Canada Revenue Agency to ensure that religious and secular charitable institutions respect their mandates, operate within their mandates. Look, there will always be those who attempt to straddle the line between mere radicalism and the radical political ideas and the advocacy of deadly or dangerous or hateful actions. But as I say, I think we have gone as far as we can go in the law in making sure that anybody who crosses that line can be prosecuted, and we're also making sure that, as I say, the Canada Revenue Agency has the resources necessary to monitor organizations that may be using funding for illegitimate purposes.
Now, in fairness to the Prime Minister, he didn't answer the question. But how do you track something that isn't illegal? Provided these foreign funds aren't from a designated terrorist group, there are no restrictions. The CRA requires that foreign gifts of over $10,000 be disclosed by charities, but as Tarek Fatah pointed out in our exchange yesterday, one of the ways in which these funds are actually coming in is through human carriers that cross the border and hand cash over to religious institutions. Additionally, it's no secret that the Saudi regime has poured around $100 billion over the last 3 to 4 decades into exporting Wahhabism, the violent, intolerant, most puritanical form of Islam espoused by the ruling family. There are Wahhabi mosques in Canada, like the Al Sunna Wahhabi Mosque in Montreal, famously visited by Justin Trudeau. We can't ban foreign money from coming in, but how about a requirement that any foreign government spending be declared? Shouldn't we know what spending is being done by foreign governments here? And maybe not even publicly, just to our Foreign Affairs Department. This isn't to halt investment, tourism promotion, proper money from coming in, but how do you stop political extremism, money that isn't for perfectly innocuous purposes, from entering the country? Funding terrorism directly is illegal, but funding extremism isn't. Now, I accept that there are no easy answers here, but this is an issue that all Canadian society must accept is happening and must confront. For TheRebel.media, I'm Marissa Semkiw.